Misfortune is an unrecognized game for the original Game Boy. To those who know of it and have played it, it's considered one of the scariest video games ever made. The game revolves around what appears to be a little boy who meets a malevolent being in a strange, gothic building. The beginning never gives its name, but it is heavily implied that this is the devil. Upon meeting the creature, a dialogue box appears with text, "I exist within the very fabric of reality. Do you want to challenge me?" This is followed by a yes or no choice. Should the player choose yes, the being replies, "Then let it begin." The player is then transported to a series of maze-like rooms, each filled with a pit drop, locked doors, keys, and traps. The object for the player is to survive each room by either reaching the stairs to the next level or solving another kind of puzzle. This can be a riddle or something else, such as picking the correct door. A good example of the level is where 4 small cabins are shown on screen, and the dialogue box appears that reads, "Choose wrong and misfortune will befall your loved ones. Are you ready to play?" Should the player make a mistake or choose a wrong exit, the screen will cut to black for a second before showing a screen of a higher resolution of the demon with a dialogue box underneath that reads, "I am God here," with blood-styled writing, possibly being the inspiration of creepypastas such as the well-known Sonic.exe. Some people who played this game and lost suddenly began to suffer from depression, and there were several cases in which people committed suicide after losing the game. Other people became jittery in their everyday life, and some became physically sick. However, if they were able to complete the challenges, they seemed to continue their everyday life with no change. Also, if a player was to make a mistake in-game, that would lead to game over, but the player quickly turned the Game Boy off, they would suffer no repercussions. It appeared to be that viewing the game over screen was responsible. This led the few people who know of the game to wonder exactly why losing the game would cause such drastic effects. The answer was the music. The music in this game was generally mature, and although being limited to the 8-bit Game Boy sound, the music was very dark and disturbing at best. However, the "I Am God" game over screen had especially disturbing, disharmonic music that accompanied it, and it is believed that this was the cause of the misfortune to the player. It consisted of deep buzzy sounds and off-key melody, and the general sound of the music was damaging to the brainwave patterns. Many people who have heard about this game, but never actually played it, have asked about how they can get their hands on a copy, and why it's never been heard of, at least for the most part. It seemed that searching for the game online has come up short, and all that exists are recordings of the game music and a few screenshots. Not even a copy of the ROM seemed to be available via various ROM sites. Well, if you're wondering where you can get a copy, if you're a hardcore Game Boy cartridge or even a ROM collector, chances are you already have it. If you've gone through your collection of classic Game Boy cartridges and are certain it isn't there, I advise looking again. Not at the cartridges, but inside them. Misfortune was never released on its own cartridge, and some people noticed that many sprites and textures in Misfortune were rehashed from other games of a similar gameplay style. A few people who played on the Game Boy ROMs noticed something about certain games that didn't make sense. In some games, mainly games like Zelda or Pokemon, people discovered that glitches and sometimes a certain sequence of events and choices warped them to misfortune. Unfortunately, there's very little information on this on the internet, possibly due to the small minority of people who have actually known of this game. Probably due to how hard it is to find. However, do not be disheartened by that. There may not be much of the game, but there is something if you dig deep enough. Don't expect to find information on the top of your searches. One thing that does seem certain, however, is that it appears to be within the ROMs as well as the cartridges. It is uncertain how many Game Boy games actually contain Misfortune, but some of the known games are listed below. The Legend of Zelda: Link's Awakening, Pokemon Red, Spud's Adventure, Poochie Carrot, The only question this leaves is why Misfortune is hidden. And not only hidden, but in so many different games which seem to have no connection with each other. A few rumors have been floating around that due to the game's disturbing nature and its curse to harm people who lose at it, it was never allowed to be released, and perhaps Nintendo hid it inside of other titles for that same reason. But this seems extremely unlikely due to Nintendo's very strict rule on what's acceptable and what isn't. And it's impossible that they would allow a game like this to be incorporated in their popular titles in secret. Even though it was never made clear how to access this game or why it is there, it is still considered the scariest game ever made by the few people in the world that have discovered it.